Hi, I'm Rachel Alexander, and as you all know by now, I also took a gap year. So at the top of the packing list for this program, it says, this is not an easy program to pack for. No matter how much or how little you pack, it's likely there will be something you wish you had left behind and something you wish you had with you. As this trip progressed, I picked up souvenirs along the way, flowing tie pants, beaded tapestries, and way too many bracelets, but I also lost things along the way. A towel left in Ecuador, earrings lost in Cambodia, and my favorite sunglasses sacrificed to India. My bag expanded, my pockets shrank, but no matter how much I spent, there are some things I couldn't have packed and I couldn't have brought. For Ecuador, I packed bug spray and Southern Charm. Technically, I also brought 9 years of Spanish. The only problem was those 9 years were all in elementary school, and my Satchel host family didn't speak Spanish. In fact, they spoke Safiki, and it quickly became apparent that Southern Charm doesn't really work when you can't formulate a complete sentence. So I tried a new tactic. Along with my roommate Maureen, we tried to be the perfect host kids. We washed dishes, we helped with cooking, we even attempted to woo them by learning Safiki. Everything was going well, but we weren't really connecting. We did our chores, but we still spent most of our time just talking to each other and just watching movies in the hammocks. At the height of trying to be the helpful host kids, we talked with our TBB neighbors, Kate, Julia, Eli, Sean, and decided to prepare a family dinner. The plan was simple. We were making pasta and pad thai salad. As anyone from the South knows, the fastest way into someone's heart is through their stomach. The first sign of trouble is when our host dad, Fausto, mixed his entire plate together. He mixed tomato sauce, cabbage, chili peppers, pasta, peanut sauce, everything. I watched in horror, but I relaxed when he continued to quietly eat his plate, looking down. He spent the entire meal without looking up, which to me signaled he was really enjoying his food. Eventually, though, he did look up, eyes bloodshot, tears streaming down his face, sweat dripping from his forehead. He ran into the kitchen. I'd never seen anyone move so quickly. I'd never seen anyone down almost half a liter of yogurt. And I'd also never seen the rest of the family laugh so hard. They made fire-breathing dragon jokes for the rest of the night and fanned their faces with their hands. And every time we tried to help with dinner after that, our host mom had a little glimmer in her eye. Our biggest mistake turned out to be the moment that brought us together. My favorite physical souvenir from Ecuador is a bracelet given to me by my host mother, but I gained another important souvenir in my 8 weeks there. I came to Ecuador thinking that the way to create connections was by being unobtrusive. I left with the realization that being perfect is boring. It's not relatable and it's not real, and at the end of the day, it will never really be me. Thankfully for Peru, I actually did follow the packing list, plus I packed an alpaca sweater, which meant that I faced only frostbite and not certain death as we hiked to Machu Picchu. In the freezing rain, which turned to snow, which quickly dissolved into shards of ice falling from the sky. And I can honestly say I've never seen such a serious winter storm. It was miserable. It was the trifecta: altitude sickness, a 4-hour uphill trek, and possibly the worst weather I've ever seen. Eventually, though, the misery came to an end. The sky cleared, and the incline decreased, and the altitude decreased with it. We ended in a valley where the stars illuminated the glaciers above us with a pale glow, and it was breathtaking. A few weeks earlier, on the infamous day of October 1st, Mara had explained her theory of fun. There's type 1 fun, which is fun now and fun later. The second type of fun is type 2 fun, which might not be so good now, but it'll definitely make a good memory later. And lastly, there's type 3 fun, which is fun now, but regrettable later. The fun scale became the running joke of the program. Whenever something went wrong, someone would invariably say, "This is only type 2 fun, don't worry." I never fully appreciated it until that moment. It made the whole journey seem worth it. Mara eventually ended up being my secret Santa in Cambodia, and she gave me a lot of tacky souvenirs, which I'll always treasure, but an appreciation for type 2 fun is what I'll take away from this trip. Packing for Thailand was easy. I'd been there before in 2014, so I thought I knew what to expect, and in some ways I did. I was used to the indirectness and friendliness of the people. I knew how to barter in the market and how to use the tuk-tuks. I knew that just because you live in Thailand doesn't mean you're Thai, and that you don't talk about the king, ever. I didn't know that the villagers were losing their children to the city. I didn't know that alcoholism was a rising trend or that whiskey could be a balanced breakfast. I didn't know our host mom would cry when we left. Thailand tested my ability to see a whole person and not just their flaws, to appreciate the nuance and subtleties that make up every human being. Even now, looking back, I have to remind myself to accept it all, the good and the bad. So I remember us locking our door on the second night and trying to avoid the party. I remember our host dad calling us daughters as the smell of whiskey filled the room and tears filled his eyes. And I remember him tirelessly trying to communicate, even when it took 30 minutes to explain one word, even when we forgot the words we learned the day before. I remember our host mom reminding us to wear our sun hats and fretting over our missing gloves and holding us close if she could stop us from leaving. And I'll take all those stories with me and more because I know some lessons can't be learned from a single story. Cambodia was the country that I felt the most unprepared for. I knew almost nothing of its history, despite America's involvement, and essentially all I had packed was ignorance. Thankfully, I got an opportunity to leave some of that behind when I met our guide, Boone. Not only did I learn the history, but I learned about hope. It sounds cliche, but he inspired me and still inspires me to be a better person. He was a child soldier. Sorry, guys. Not playing this well. A deserter, a monk, a tour guide, a business owner, and a comedian. But most importantly, he was a storyteller. His story wasn't one that inspired pity, but it was one that inspired awe. One of the memories that most stuck with me was when he told us that everything has an opposite. Happiness, sadness, good, evil, light, and dark. The secret, he said, wasn't in avoiding or ignoring pain. It was in letting it be like writing on the water. Let it be temporary, because if there's sadness, happiness must follow. He had seen the destruction of an entire generation, stepped on a landmine, watched his country fall apart, and yet none of that could dull his spirit. He had hopes and dreams. He created a community and found a sense of peace that I'm not sure I've ever experienced. I'm still trying to process all that I saw in my short time there, but that sense of joy in the face of horror, of hope in the wake of so much destruction is what I've taken with me. Along the journey, I picked up some serious coping mechanisms for all the uncomfortable situations I experienced. 3 months into the program, and I figured I was basically impervious to feeling awkward. Then I arrived in India. I felt like I was constantly on display. Not only was I clearly not Indian, I didn't speak the language, I didn't know how to dress, I didn't know how to handle strangers constantly coming up to me. The strangers were unnerving, but the worst part turned out to be the principal at our school. He was pushy and aggressive, always asking us for a favor. First, make posters for the kids. No, those posters aren't good enough. Make new ones. Have a dance party with the kids. Not only have a dance party, but let me film it and then put it on the internet without your permission. Despite all my previous discomfort training, he had succeeded, and I was supremely uncomfortable. The first week was a disaster. We agreed to every request, trying to juggle grading homework, making posters, reading for seminars, discussing oppression, and planning activities. I remember having a conversation with Jackie after she shadowed us for a day at our school, where she told me that the secret wasn't in trying to change the system, but to fix the existing system. So that's what I did. I tried to engage more with the principals and the other teachers. I stopped disagreeing and started asking questions, not only to challenge, but also to learn. I got to learn about his history, how this was his first time being a principal, how hard he had worked to create and maintain the school. And I realized that what I interpreted as being pushy or overbearing was just him trying to be direct. That directness, which seemed so offensive to me, was one of his greatest assets. I still remember that sense of accomplishment when he asked me what I wanted to teach the next day instead of just handing me a schedule. That being said, he never stopped asking for favors. He never stopped asking for more, sometimes too much, from those around him, and that included me. I, in turn, learned how to demand respect, how to advocate for myself without apology, without fear of asking too much or seeming too pushy. What started out feeling so oppressive ended up being one of the more liberating experiences for me on this trip, and that's what I took with me, the freedom to always ask for more. South Africa was an exercise in identity. I came into this program thinking I had a pretty good view of who I was, and I think I still do. That being said, South Africa really challenged what I thought about how I'm perceived. Quick history lesson. In South Africa, there are 3 main race designations. The first would be colored, which is basically means a mix of white and black. White being people of European descent, and black being people who are members of indigenous tribes, such as the Xhosa or the Zulu. My host family in the Crags was a colored family, and I remember on the first night when my hostess D referred to me as colored and sent sort of a chill down my spine. It wasn't that I was offended or surprised, it was just the strangeness of seeing how something I viewed as permanent, my race, could become impermanent. I suddenly had been given a new identity. I had questioned my identity before during freshman year of high school. We had a new student named Ruan, who was ethnically Indian, but she was from South Africa, born and raised, and there was a huge debate over whether she qualified to be part of the Black Student Alliance. She didn't really understand the controversy. She was African, she was American, case closed. That was the first time that I saw that race meant different things to different people. To some, it's a shared heritage, ancestry, or culture, and to others, it's just the color of their skin. I had forgotten about this experience until that first night in Plet, and what was proven to be true in Plet turned out to be what I thought to be true freshman year. Ruan was allowed to be in the Alliance. It didn't really matter how anyone else saw her, but it was about what she viewed as her own identity. Similarly, whether I was perceived as Xhosa or colored, it never really changed who I was. I struggled to find a label for myself that fit and that felt genuine, and I never really found one, but I think that's okay. Labels have power because of the power we give them, and I'd always given them too much power over myself. In South Africa, that power, that limitation is what I tried to leave behind. I brought a gift from Atlanta for each host family. The gift was a paperweight of the Atlanta skyline and either pecan pralines or a small jar of apple butter. The apple butter is delicious. I hope I gave the communities I live with more than just that. Author Jay Asher wrote, "No one knows for certain how much impact they have on the lives of other people. Oftentimes we have no clue. The people I've met in the past months have had an influence on my life, whether they were trying to or not." And one of our main TBB questions was, how can I be a proactive agent of change? I still don't know how to define development or how to change the world, but I've been shown by example how to impact others. And I've learned that everyone has the power to be a source of change for other people. It's up to each of us what we want that change to be. That's it. Now we have time for like questions or like comments or whatever.
See, you say you feel that you come back changed and not necessarily knowing what your identity is or what kind of label you want to put on yourself. But I mean, how do you feel that you changed the philosophy or developed in the last year?
Hard question. I don't know. I think that I came to this program hoping that I would sort of get not such direction, because I always sort of knew what I wanted to do with my life, but like sort of a sense of how to do that, and like how you can be a proactive agent of change, how you can define development, how you can help people who like don't have the same privileges or opportunities as you do. And I never really understood how complicated that question was until I came on this trip, and I think that I sort of got okay with that, with like not knowing exactly what your impact is going to be and not knowing exactly how you can like come up with something that's a solution to a complicated problem, but just knowing that you're one cog in sort of this whole machine that has to work together. And I think I've become like more okay with that, and it showed me like ways to like make change in that way rather than trying to like change the whole system. No, of course not.
What was your best fun experience? Just flat out fun.
Oh, in Ecuador, we went rafting in the Amazonian basin, which was really cool. And we were all on a boat together. Jake was in my boat. And at one point we went over like a rapid, and the whole day it was awful because the whole day our guide had been telling us like, "Oh, you're paddling badly. Like you guys are the worst paddling team I've ever seen." Like all this stuff. So we knew that there was trouble ahead. And we went over a rapid, and he was like, "Go to the left, go to the left," and like we didn't do it. And we ended up like, I got knocked out of the boat, Mara got knocked out of the boat, we like smacked Jake in the face with our paddles, like just like total disaster, and like we ended up like floating down the river. I thought I was gonna die. And eventually though I was saved by a guy on a kayak, and that was like one of the funniest experiences, because like it became a running joke of the trip was that like Mara always falls down, and like I almost died in like the Amazon. So more questions? Are we good? Thank you.
Did you miss your southern cooking?
Yeah, I really did. Not always, but like Ecuador, there was like the log was the most popular dish, which is like plantains that are like mashed up and then just like formed into like a block and then boiled, and that was like one of the worst things. So yeah, definitely miss the southern cooking at some point. So.
You brought back or recipes that you brought back that you'll share?
Maybe. We'll have a dinner party eventually. We can talk about it later.
Well, there's just one character that you can walk with you for the rest of your life that you met, metaphorically, pick up on their spirit and have them walk with you. Who would you take with you?
It'd probably be Boone, like our guide that I talked about from Cambodia. He was someone who had a really complicated past, and like he had like run away from the military. He was like a child soldier. He had been a monk for a while, and like all these things were a part of his identity. And somehow he was able to like reconcile all of that and like move forward with his life. And he's one of the most ridiculous people I've ever met. And like that he had no boundaries. He would just tell you everything about himself, like no apologies, no nothing, like the bad, the good, everything, and like constantly making these like weird off-color jokes about like the number 7, and like he had this weird like Boston accent he liked to say. But I don't know, it was just he was really inspirational because he was able to like be that person and be this silly like person who had all this crazy history and like he hadn't let that define him or like limit his life, and like I think that was really incredible. So
What was your favorite country?
probably Ecuador was my favorite country, but they were all different. Like I think I would probably visit all of them again, but yeah, I really enjoyed Ecuador.
You said, I think it's Thailand, you said your host mother cried.
Yeah.
Were you like,
Yeah.
which host family did you not want to leave?
I don't know. To be honest, I didn't really want to leave like any of them, which sounds like such a fake answer. But maybe in South Africa, we had a really interesting host family, and that was the family we were able to communicate the most with because they spoke the most fluent English, and the most English is like similar to how we speak here, and so it's just easier to connect with them because of the similar culture. So it was really sad to leave there.
Which of the tasks that you performed in the different countries made the biggest difference?
This is probably gonna be a controversial answer with my like TBB alum, but I really think that like our time in India, whether it had like a good or bad impact, is like really up to discussion. Like we talk a lot about like education is like a form of like indoctrination to a certain system, or education as a form of like liberation, all those sort of concepts. But I think that our schools in India, we were the most like involved in terms of our community work, and we were the most like instrumental to their like day-to-day lives. And like I think we actually had an impact on like how the schools maybe run in the future and like the impact of like how the kids are learning now. And so I think we had the biggest impact there, although I don't know if that's positive or negative.
I know you talked about the ramping, but what was the most adventurous thing you did?
We went bungee jumping. So that was probably the most adventurous thing we did. We also went shark tank diving. Yeah, those are probably the most adventurous things we did on the trip. But like we all did that together. It was fun. Kind of gross. Yeah. We all had to go on the camels as part of the trip. It was fun. It was nice to like go through the desert and like get to see like nature like away from like the roads and away from like the India that we've been a part of. We've been living in the city, so it was like cool to see a different part of the country. Actually, it wasn't that hot when we were there. It wasn't too bad. It was really pleasant. I think we lucked out with the timing. So, yeah. Thank you.